Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi, everyone. It's been a rough week, and I'm grateful that I have these conversations with Greg Rucka to vent, unwind, and contemplate the meaning of life. In this episode, Greg and I mourn the loss of Chadwick Boseman and naturally talk a little bit about politics. Greg also talks with me about a conflict I am having over Disney's live-action movie Mulan. While I have personal connection to the character and story, it has been a point of contention with me of late. Like many other fans, I was excited for the film when it was announced. Reminiscing about my times modeling for the animated film brought back a great deal of nostalgia. However, a shadow has been cast on the film since last year when the lead actress, Yifei Liu, sided with the Hong Kong police amidst the pro-democracy protests. I'm grateful for these conversations and hope you are enjoying them. Don't forget, our next book club choice is Greg's very own Atticus Kodiak novels, so get reading. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times best-selling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He's also the writer of the hit film The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron. Please help me share this podcast with others and rate it on your platform of choice. I would also love it if you supported with a donation on patreon.com or my website. Help me keep this podcast going, please. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Greg Rucka.
Hello, Mimi.
How's it going on your end?
It's going okay. I just found my very large perpendicular drafting triangle in my office for reasons that I cannot explain. And I'm now trying to figure out a place to put it. So, like all things in my office, device. It ends up on the floor.
Well, you know, that's what the floor is for things to be put upon.
Exactly. The floor exists to have things on it. I mean, why else have a floor?
Exactly. So I think you'd find this kind of amusing. I was invited onto a podcast yesterday, and it was a Disney fan podcast because, of course, Mulan's coming out this weekend. And he's actually a kung fu student of mine that just kind of started, and I guess he started to kind of listen to a couple of our podcasts. And so he introduced me as the co-host of Culture Chat. And I was like, oh, okay. So I thought you would love that because, you know, basically that's it. You're stuck with me now.
Yeah, I have to confess to some mild amusement there. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah, okay. See, I thought you would enjoy that. I was like, oh, this is good. I cannot wait to share this with Greg. Because literally, and you'll be kind of amused at this as well. I don't remember what I was trying to look up. I think I was trying to find one of your other podcasts that you did with another a show, and I typed in Greg Rucka, and it's just like Culture Chat with Mimi Chan comes up like 100 times because it's literally like, you know, you're here every week. So I love that. I think that's really cool. So you're linked now.
Well, it's either good for you or bad.
It's good. We've established that it's very, very good.
And I still am not sure I believe you, but okay.
I'm happy with my association with you. So, but I did want to check in with you because, of course, I know you had a kind of a tumultuous week last week.
I mean, I guess schedule-wise, the gap will not become evident, but we skipped last week because last week was hell. And I think was hell for almost everybody I've spoken to. Mm-hmm. Last week was extraordinarily difficult. And I wonder how much of that has to do with the RNC rally, mm-hmm. And sort of the sickening dread of watching an act of pure fascism taking place without commentary or resistance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that combined, I think that was sort of the background noise that seeped into
definitely. It set the tone.
Yeah, and you couldn't escape it. I mean, this week, right? This is now the first week of September as we're recording this. I mean, I'm off. The only social media I have is Instagram, and I am off it this week. I have not opened it. It took 2 days of actually physically stopping myself. You know, that thing where you have your phone and you almost automatically open the app. And I caught my thumb moving to it, and I was like, no. So, you know, here we are on Thursday, and I think now I'll make it, you know, and I'll go back on next week. But it really is, this week's a detox.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you know, there was family stuff going on. My mom lives on the central coast of California, and there were 3 major wildfires all burning in the area. And, you know, my mom is 80. My mom is mobility impaired. She and her caregiver they were in a zone that was under an evacuation warning. And it was like, well, we got to get you out.
Yeah.
So basically over the course of 24 hours, we got her from California up here. She and her caregiver, she and Lydia. So my mom was here for a week, and that was lovely, but that was also its own challenge because our house is not designed for the mobility impaired. And the phrase that was used like day before yesterday to describe last week was there was no emotional privacy for anybody in the house. And you add that to everything that was going on in the world. You add that to the shooting in Portland. You add all of that together. And it was unrelenting. There was nowhere to go. There was absolutely no way to escape it. So, and God forbid, you know, I try to get any work done.
Yeah, it's hard as is when one has even a guest that's welcome and happy to be there and that you want to see. It's just very disruptive in terms of like all the things going on. Like you said, the RNC set the tone, and then it heightens every other thing. And then literally the world being on fire that we've talked about so often, but literally your mom having to escape the world.
It was quite literally on fire. Yes.
Literally having to escape that and just going, oh, you know, here's another thing to kind of remind us of all these other external factors that are happening. And like you said, it was just like bad news after another from the shootings. And then even today, like I woke up.
And then the insult to injury was the passing of Chadwick.
Absolutely, yes. So,
I mean, it really was like, I saw, before I went off Instagram, I saw somebody, I guess, had taken a picture of a tweet that was effectively saying that 2020, you know, you keep taking the good ones, and I guess that's your right, but could you maybe take a couple of the bad ones too?
Yeah. Yeah, that was just the final, I think, because it was Friday night, it was and that was just like the end of the week. And I was like, I'm done. This week is, like you said, it was just so many different things. And that was just devastating. And I don't even think it was just he's so young and all these things, but it's kind of all the things he's represented to so many people. And then to find out he suffered in silence. And, you know, then you start seeing the pictures of him visiting the kids in the hospital, and this human being that just represents so much to so many. It's just like even more disheartening. So it was truly devastating, still is. And it's been the only thing that I've enjoyed is seeing how many people have shared their positive experiences with him and what, you know, his roles have meant, but also him as a human, as a person, a humanitarian, and on all of that has been good to see some positivity in the news cycle. Have you, you know, seen something that's quasi inspiring, but it's from tragedy though?
It is absolutely inspiring. And it is, I mean, it being tragic is not exclusive to the inspiration that he provided and still provides with his memory and his body of work. It is, you know, we talk about representation a lot, but yeah, my God, what a living testament to its importance. It is, yeah, and this sense of loss is so profound because as more and more becomes clear about how he lived his life, and the grace with which he moved through the world, we become more and more aware of what we have lost.
Exactly.
And I am trying not to dwell on the fact that I'm 7 years older than he was. But that being said, trying to find the positive here, he is an inspiring story. And I don't know his personal life, and we don't know what may, what will ultimately be said on that account. But we can look at the public record and go, look, I'm not going to be a movie star. I'm not going to be, leading a Marvel superhero movie, but I can still give of myself in an applicable and appreciable way. And I think that's, he chose to do the things he did. He didn't have to visit kids at St. Jude's, and
he didn't make it this publicity thing.
Exactly.
You see, that's the thing that you go, wow, okay, he's the real deal, because we find out later that all these things, and it's just what he did. Exactly.
In Judaism, there's a tradition of charity called tzedakah, right? And it is the act of giving money and time and service to a charitable or good cause. And there is sort of a vague hierarchy to it. And the best tzedakah morally is anonymous. Is to give of yourself without pursuing the recognition, which I suppose goes back to loosely, that equates to the good place moral desert argument. But it's all of one, and yeah, I mourn what we lose there, but holy mackerel, am I grateful for what he gave us. And I don't mean that simply in terms of his body of work, but what he put into the universe. Yeah,
and the example that he's now setting and continues to set, which is so powerful and amazing. So absolutely, great loss. But like you said, we're trying to look. We're always we kind of delve into the deep, and then we always go, okay, how can we pull ourselves out with some hope and some positivity? And I think definitely just seeing what he's contributed after the fact, knowing has been really, really incredible. So yeah, that was like the end of the week, and it made it for just kind of that gut wrenching, like you're kind of just exhausted by the weekend, and like you of course had all of these things happening with your mom and literally combating the world on fire. And then, like you said, Portland was in the cycle.
Yeah, it was genuinely, I don't know how bad it was for you, for instance, for you and Oscar, but I genuinely don't, there's nobody I have spoken to in my immediate circle of friends who just did not have a miserable, traumatic time last week. Just nobody. Literally, I can go down the list.
I know, and I'd love to be that person that goes, no, I had a fantastic week, but honestly, it was actually a really rough week. And like you said, there's so many little factors, and had some of the events that, happened for me personally didn't happen, I don't know if it would have been as bad, but like literally it did all happen last week. And, there was a lot of tears shed last week. I had some moments. I'm not going to lie.
I had a friend literally send me a message, like, we're on Marco Polo, well, I don't know if you know the service. You can send effectively their video texts. But I've actually found it very useful. Kelly Sue DeConnick introduced me to it. And
okay.
I found it very useful in these times of, social isolation to actually be able to see somebody that I haven't seen in 6 months and speak to them, quote unquote, directly. And I'd send a message basically saying, at night, like, I think it was like 10 at night, and I was just like, it's miserable and it's fatigue. It's that sense of just make it stop. And the response I got the next morning was effectively, the person I sent it to saying, I lost some water weight, weeping in the shower this morning. And it's just, it was just horrible, with the exception of one thing, actually, now that I think of it, which is a friend of mine and his wife, they had their baby girl.
Oh,
and
there we go.
And it was a little, I understand there were some minor health issues there, but she is doing very well now, and mom is well, and he is well, though exhausted because they ain't sleeping.
Nope. And for a while longer, they ain't sleeping.
Yeah, well, it can be bad, man. I think for Dashel, we didn't sleep well for 2 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Do you remind her of that fact ever so often?
No. I don't want to be that dad. I'm not going to be the one who's going to, she brings, her significant other home. I'm not going to be like, want to see naked baby pictures?
Oh, gosh. Thank goodness. Oh, gosh. Yeah. No, don't do that. Oh, my goodness. Well, at least we're moving into a new week. It's a new month. It's September. And
that's right.
We're turning that corner, but it's a scary corner because I feel like a lot of the reason I've also been feeling this like kind of angst and anxiety is it does get closer to the election. Yeah. And I don't feel any more confident yet. I keep hearing all these different conversations that I'm having.
We cannot feel confident. There is no confidence to have here. What we've got to do is look, if you are, as we are, of the belief that this guy's got to go, it's abundantly clear he's going to do everything possible to not. So he's going to sabotage the election in every way he can. He's going to make it as difficult as possible to vote. He's going to try to swing it. Their October surprise is going to be releasing a vaccine. They've already directed the CDC to be ready for it. And it's like, I'm not fucking taking that vaccine, man. I'll wait till clinical trials are completed.
Yeah.
But I mean, literally every single thing that can be done legally and illegally, morally and immorally, ethically and unethically, this son of a bitch is going to do. And he's made it abundantly clear.
Yeah.
Right? Russia is going to do everything they can to keep him. And it's going to come down to, in the moment, everybody's got to vote. Everybody's got to vote. And then what happens after, that's the question.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen after, I have days when I'm like, we have to decide what we're willing to accept. Because if he claims that he's won, and Biden refuses to concede, and I suspect he will, then, meaning that in that case, if Trump says I win, Biden will not concede. We're going to see, we're only going to see more violence in the next couple months. We're only going to see more rhetoric. We're only going to see more extremism. And this is the thing that, and I think I've said this before, and we've got an issue of Lazarus will come out on the 28th of October. And I have, I can't remember if I've said this to you. I just more and more have gotten to the place, and it's obvious now. I mean, I should have been able to articulate this years ago. And maybe I was trying to, but not doing so clearly. The the radicalization of the white supremacist, right? If you saw this happening if we took Tucker Carlson and we put him in a mosque and he was an imam, right? We would call that terrorism.
Oh, absolutely.
In a hot second, we would be like,
I'm 100% with you.
That's radicalization.
Yes.
And that's what this is.
Yes.
These people are radicalized.
Absolutely.
Now, they are, and when you break down what that word means, it means that they are beyond reason. Mm-hmm. Right? There is no discourse to be had. They have been effectively radicalized, and they have been radicalized by a conservative-driven engine that has been doing this for 20 plus years. That's all this is. Mm-hmm. Out. She is walking the dog. Yeah.
So I often had this conversation with a lot of people because I have a lot of friends that are very progressive, and we kind of get into this whole, well, it's the First Amendment and people have the right, freedom of speech and all these things. And I'm like, yeah, except for when it's terrorism. Except for when the speech is that of, like you said, that's radical. And I've always said, I think white supremacy and the KKK and all of these national, these organizations are not freedom. They should not be covered under freedom of speech because it's terrorism, and any other faction or race would be considered a terrorist, like you were saying.
Yeah, it is.
I've always had this conversation with people and was very frustrated.
It is really, really difficult, because part of the argument in saying if you restrict any kind of speech is that you open the door to restricting other kinds of speech. Mm-hmm. We, however, do make a legal differentiation as to what is free speech and what is hate speech. Mm-hmm. And we are really, really bad at the hate speech enforcement part.
Yeah.
I have said before, Justin Greenwood and I did a short story for a fundraiser that centered on this. But, Reagan's destruction of the fairness doctrine has brought us where we are today. And I absolutely firmly believe that even if we get, Hissy Fitler out, we are not going to be able to correct this situation until there is a new fairness doctrine. And I've gotten to the point actually where I'm writing my reps about this, and I'm saying it's got to come back. Because what the fairness doctrine required, right, was that you had to grant equal time to opposing views, which means which means that a person could not put on Fox News and only get reinforcement for what they believed. That there had to be somebody to go up opposite Tucker Carlson to say Tucker's full of shit. And here's why, right? You had to be able to argue the point. Mm-hmm. And the absence of that means that nobody ever gets challenged. Nobody ever has to think critically. And so, number one, we got to bring it back. It's got to be, you want a broadcast license, you have to abide by these standards. I further think it's got to be beefed up. If you are peddling something as news and it's false, you are fined, and you are fined punitively, like $100 million fines.
Yes.
I think it needs to be extended to social media platforms, all of them, right? I think it's got to go to Facebook. I think it's got to go to Twitter. If Facebook is putting up deep fake videos that have been identified as deep fakes, and they say, well, we don't have to take them down, guess what? There's a $100 million fine for every hour it's on your site. It's got to go. Mm-hmm. And we know these companies can do it. Seriously, YouTube, the example I always use is, God forbid somebody upload a clip from, the Avengers to YouTube when it's still in theaters, in a quote unquote unauthorized manner, that thing will be down in seconds.
Yeah.
In seconds. So they can do this. And if they don't do this, then they need to be punished. That's the rule. But we've got to set up these guides because the excuse of, well, it's freedom of expression, it's not. It isn't. These are private platforms being used to broadcast into a public space. All right. That is that the internet is created by and technically owned by, right, the government in the same way that broadcast license, the airwaves are owned by the government. They're public utilities. Mm-hmm. But what's happened is people have bought them and now they're claiming them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The government's got to reassert their right to these things and say, no, you want to use it? You want to broadcast? You want to get your content out? Then you have to abide by these standards. You got to do it. And I think if we don't do that, then all we've got is a stopgap, because QAnon will continue to flourish. And if you believe QAnon, you are by definition radicalized. So I just, first and foremost, we have to claim back the sources of information. There's a reason why people don't believe the media, and the reason they don't believe the media is because, frankly, the media has become grossly untrustworthy in those places that they say, no, you can trust us. Mm-hmm. And that means, Fox has to do equal time. MSNBC does. Yeah, right?
They all do. I mean,
it's got to be.
So, I had been calling for like a 24-hour news cycle without having to hear 45's name once. And I was like, could you imagine what that would be like? Like how amazing that would be. I was asking for that from like 2015. I was like, hey, you know what news cycle you should do? Stop giving him free press. Stop giving him free, that was before he was elected. And now I'm like, oh gosh, it's just.
Right, because
But in order to get that done, we need working government.
Yeah, and
you need a government that's going to...
And you need a government that says your corporate profits are not as important as the integrity and safety of the republic.
Yeah.
I mean,
but then you said the word profit there, right? And so
yes,
and there comes back to that again. Oscar,
you go back through all the 2016 stuff, and everybody. I mean, the quotes from every network were like, "Oh my God, this guy's a ratings bonanza," and that. I can't remember what the figures were, but there was an analysis done of the effective dollar amount in free advertising he was given by all of the news networks, and it was horrifying.
Yeah,
it was horrifying.
It is horrifying, and I suspect we'll be talking about this a lot when we do finally get to talk about your books, because Oscar said something the other day. He was reading. He goes, "Oh, don't listen to this podcast," or it was something he listened to because it was just like all about the sex trade and sexual abuse and all these things. And he goes, it's just what Greg said. It's all about the money, and nothing, like every moral, every rule, everything gets broken if there's enough money involved with so many people when it comes to corruption and money. And he's like, Greg is right on there with that whole, and I go, yeah, a lot of the themes of the things that he writes is just like, this is literally kind of that root of the evil and how people respond to it, and it seeps into you and just takes over. And it really is. It does come down to that.
And we're all trapped in it to a lesser or greater
of course,
because we're all part of a capitalist system, and we need money to survive in that system. The ability to withdraw from it is incredibly impaired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listened to the Daily today, and Jimmy Lai was on, who is from Hong Kong, and he's basically started off in China in a sweatshop, ended up being one of the biggest brands. If you're not familiar with him, Giordano, and he had this really cool backstory on why he chose that. And Oscar and I love that because we loved shopping there actually in Hong Kong, and I didn't know anything about that. But he ends up being this huge media tycoon, like basically has what I think is called Apple News over there, Apple newspaper over there. And he was, of course, arrested. It's called the Apple Daily. Of course, he was arrested because of the new law. And he's I don't know if he's a billionaire. He's very wealthy. And basically the end of the interview, it's just like, are you going to leave and find your freedom and take your millions? Are you going to stay and fight? What's because you'll probably be thrown in jail and you won't be able to get out at the end of the day. And he's like, then that's what I have to do because I'm just one person versus a whole country of what we're fighting for in that freedom. And so he's got all this money, and he's like, if I only wanted money in the world, and so there's very few people that live by that, and when I heard that today, and it just like resonated, and it's something I wanted to talk to you about too. It's just like, because there's so much going on and there's so much civil unrest here, it has been something in the back of my mind because I do have family in Hong Kong. I do remember when the handover was happening again, my father worked really hard to bring some of his really close friends, family, like sponsor them because he was worried things were going to happen like right when the handover happened. And I was like, well, it didn't happen then, but it's here now. And
no, it took a generation because after a generation, you can get people to forget.
Exactly. Right. And that's what it is. And now we're all distracted too, right? So everyone's so distracted with the world on fire here. And of course, with COVID and then, our president is the biggest distractor there is.
Right. I mean, and Russia doesn't give a rat's ass what China does internally because there's no moral stance for the Russian government to take. They're not going to look and be like, oh God, you guys are totalitarian. That's bad.
Yeah.
The major check has always been, in particular, the U.S. as a soft power force and its relationship with the other Western democracies, primarily the European ones. Well, all of that's been shot to hell. Yep. So China now can go, oh no, we could shoot people in the middle of Fifth Avenue. What are you going to do about it?
The new national security law is a huge deal, and it went without notice. And then, of course, this leads me to, I had this little very Disney-friendly, happy fan plays podcast yesterday. I'm like, well, what are you going to ask me about the Mulan movie? Because I have feelings about this. I have conflicted feelings. And so we kept it very Disney-friendly, happy, neutral. But I was like, I'm going to need to talk to Greg about this because I have feelings that need to come out.
So let's talk about it because I know there is a movie coming.
Yes, this weekend on Disney Plus for $30.
$30 for the subscription or the movie?
For the movie. You have to be a Disney Plus subscriber and you can pay $30 to get the
watch
movie.
It?
Yes. I guess you could still keep watching it. Not like when you buy a movie on Amazon and then it goes away. I think you can still, once you've bought it, it's in your queue.
Have it?
I believe so. Yeah. And so, there's that. However, just today or yesterday, they announced December, whatever, they're going to be releasing it to all subscribers. So that's kind of an interesting twist. I don't know. I'm not on the Disney marketing team, but they probably know what they're doing. They're probably testing out the whole Premier Access thing.
They're desperately trying to get some money in because they hemorrhaged this year.
Oh yeah, this has been
all
disastrous.
The have. It goes back to everything that AT&T did to DC because what they did to DC, they did to all the Warner Brothers. But specifically to the movie, I have not followed anything about it.
Yeah, so obviously it's very close to my heart.
Yes, I was going to say,
you
have a more intimate relationship with the material.
Yes. So, of course, I've been asked a lot about it, and there's a lot of excitement. And when it first was announced, it was thrilling that it was going to become this live action thing and seeing yet another film that was going to portray, Chinese culture in a positive light, but also, basically hire a lot of actors and whatnot, and just have yet another film that would hopefully be representative of a lot of people and show representation and be something really positive. And so there's a lot of excitement. And then last year, the lead actress, Fei Liu, she basically it's Weibo. It's like Chinese Twitter. I support the Hong Kong police. You can all attack me now. What a shame for Hong Kong. So, she posted on her Weibo, which is like Twitter. And it was basically, that was the time when the protests had just started and the police were being very brutal and there was a lot of conflict. It was one of the first moments. I mean, I remember these beautiful visions, these beautiful protests where they were like singing Les Miserables, and it was just like very peaceful. And of course, like all protests, things escalate. But it's
because the act of protest is protest.
Yes, so. yes. And so there was a huge controversy around that because she is Mulan. She's the title character. The name of the movie is Mulan, and she is playing Mulan. So there's been a huge boycott Mulan since last August that has gone on. And of course, Disney didn't have her come out to, what is it called? D3, their big convention, like the D20. I don't know what it's called. And it's horrible. I should know everything about Disney, but I don't. And so Nikki Caro, of course, was on talking about the film and promoting. They really kind of had it like silenced, but there was never any word from her on, no, I don't believe in, there was never any retraction.
If she hasn't commented on it, then...
Yeah. And so,
because it's not like she doesn't know what she said. And either she believes it because she's an idiot, or she believes it because she believes it, or she said it because she wants to, she wants the favor of the Hong Kong,
Chinese government.
Chinese government.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that.
Or anything else that's going on in the background, which is I have family in China and I want to take care of them and I have to do this.
Yeah. So
you can spin it however you like, but the fact of the matter is that she said it, and that this goes to something else, interestingly enough, but that she said it and that, that she said it and then did not, that was not, there was no retraction or clarification.
Yes.
That's problematic, and you can't ignore that. Now, the Chinese market is huge.
Yep.
I mean, it is huge, and
and that's primarily where her films are. That's primarily where she makes films. So she was born in China, but she came to the U.S. when she was young, and she was basically able to get her citizenship. So she has the luxury of having that American citizenship, but her primary work has all been big Chinese films, and she's very prominent there, as are pretty much the top 4 or 5 billed actors in this film, in which not just her, but others have come out very pro Beijing, very in support of the, CCP. And so I have conflicts with this, right? Because on one hand, I love the fact that Nikki Caro, another female director, Gina and I talked about it on our show, like we support the fact that there's finally more women directors out there with these huge studio films, action films of the like, and that there are other cast members in this that are not from China or in support of beliefs that I don't believe in, right? Or, there are other factors in this film. But then, Disney also didn't do anything to not make her retract it, or, but there have been other times where Disney's like, hey, if you want us to continue with this, you have to apologize. They have a say. So it's just precarious for them because literally they know the China market is probably what's going to save this film. I mean, apparently it's like a $200 million film. And like you always say, comes down to the dollar sign. And so they're not going to piss them off because they're getting a theatrical release over there.
Yep.
If things are better. And so they're going to release over there, and that's where they're going to make up their
we're told things are better.
Yeah, right. We're told things are better, but I meant things are open. Are open, and so they're going to go.
We're told things are open.
Yeah.
Do not for a second ever forget that almost anything you're hearing out of any totalitarian regime, and China is totalitarian. The Communist Party rules, doesn't govern, they rule. You're getting the message that they are trying to control. It isn't always the only message that's coming out, but never ever forget they're sending a message. It's weird for me, Mimi, because as much as I love the animated Mulan, and I do love it, it is like one of my favorite Disney films.
I'm so glad.
I mean that, and I'm not. That isn't me just cuddling up. That's me being absolutely sincere. I remember seeing it at Man's Chinese.
Oh, cool!
I think it was a big damn deal, and getting the soundtrack and. I found it at the right time in my life. But all that said, I am not as emotionally connected to it as you are. And frankly, I think certainly as somebody who would see their own culture being represented. So for me, it's easier to say, well, I'm not going to see it. They don't get my money for it.
Right.
That's an easier decision for me. Times like this, I think about, for instance, the immense power of the Cuban voting population in southern Florida, right?
Yes.
Now, percentage-wise, not a huge portion of the national population.
Right.
State-wise, still not. The clout that body has, right, is disproportionate to their size. We're a Chinese American population to similarly organize or speak up or be motivated. That's a big damn hammer. But once again, you find yourself having to ask if, for me, it becomes entirely a personal thing. This is the principle. If this is something that you can make peace with, then see it and enjoy it, recognizing how problematic everything is, for better and for worse. And if it isn't something you can make peace with, then don't. And make sure you can articulate to others why it is you are not participating in this.
Right. Yeah, it's been very conflictive leading up to it, because last year I was like, I'm not really sure how I'm feeling about this, and now we're all in the situation where there's no theaters, so I don't have to make that decision, but I already have Disney Plus, and so it's just this thing. And then also because of the way the news cycle is and all this stuff, there's been like a lot of Asian hate crimes. There's been a lot of things happening due to 45 kind of saying, hey, this is all Asian, China's fault, and basically that trickle down effect of that divisiveness and hate and inciting fear and violence in others. I think there was like an 89 or 90-year-old woman attacked.
Yeah, I know. It is.
And it's...
it is, and it's deliberate. Yes. And in moments like this as well, you want to have those things that I think you want to be proud to be Chinese. And a good Mulan movie should be a thing you can be proud of.
Right.
Because that's a representation that you want to see as positive.
Right.
But it's false right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to ask, if there is such an obvious concern on Disney's part regarding the success of the movie in China, then I would be very surprised if because remember, every piece of entertainment is a piece of art. There's a message to it.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be in neon, but there is a message. And I would be very surprised that the message here is not going to be pro-regime.
Yeah. So Oscar and I pretty much do not watch any of the last, I'd say, 10 years of films that are coming out of China, which are a lot of martial arts films. And everyone always says, hey, have you seen the new this? And Oscar and I, like, we don't watch that because we stopped watching as soon as the Hong Kong studios turned into more China studios. There was a definitive switch in the way the films were. They were very populist. They were very pro-China, which is, I get it. I mean, we've got our Navy SEAL films. We've got our, Go USA films. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have pride in their country or whatnot, but it feels like propaganda to me when I would watch it. Like, I just want to watch a Kung Fu movie. I just want to watch a Kung Fu movie. I don't want to feel like I'm getting pro-regime and like that populist, message. And so we make a very conscious decision not to watch anything in that genre. And I just think about it now and I think, okay, say it were a, kind of a Black Panther type of movie or a, XYZ movie. And like all these other things are happening with so much social justice and civil unrest around the world and all these protests and things like that. It's like, well, if an actor from that, came out and said the N-word or did something crazy, like what would happen, what would happen if the lead character just basically let you down, Like, what do you do? And then I think about the Me Too movement and how there was finally a little bit of backlash for comedians or for actors or for directors or for producers and like Harvey Weinstein, right? There's finally a little bit of that consequence that you want and need to see, like there's some repercussions for actions. And I feel like this is like a slippery slope because on one hand, like I said, there are other people that made this film that I totally support and have worked so hard to get their roles. People I know in this film that have worked really hard for 20 plus years to finally have a role in a film this big. And then, it's just sucks that it's been shadowed by yet again, all these world issues. But the world issues are real, and if we don't speak about them and admit that that's a problem, I feel like that's why I feel so conflicted.
Yeah, and there is. I do not. I mean, I do not at all look at it and go, and go, this is easy. Mm-hmm. It isn't.
Yeah.
Which again is why it becomes personal, So.
But I do appreciate the conversation because, like I said, I was like, I really need to talk to Greg. First of all, I didn't talk to him last week. And second of all,
there's all this stuff.
And only Greg can get on it with me because, everybody else wants to ask me from a Mulan perspective.
Yeah.
I was like, you realize that was 22 years ago, right?
Yeah, but
yes, there's a connection.
Crucially, in an important part of your life as well.
Of course, absolutely. In so many layers, in so many ways.
And emotionally, I would imagine there's pain there now looking at this thing and being like, so many things associated with this character and this experience are positive, and now it is being tainted and changed. Mm-hmm. And that is an intimate thing that you are experiencing uniquely to yourself. It is... I can see similar, perhaps analogous experiences for myself in, this got adapted or this got adapted. But
It'd be like someone taking your Lazarus and just stomping on it. I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we would never let that happen. I will be there with my sword, and we would not let this happen. That's your baby. So, but so I know I appreciate the conversation. And like I said, there's not really quote unquote answers, but I do want listeners to think about that. Like every decision we make is an important one. It's like every action you do is an important one. Everything
these are all choices.
Matters.
Yeah,
yes,
these are choices, and it's important to remember again, right? You've seen, I'm sure, a lot that, right? The statement, if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be working so hard to keep you from using it, but take it away from you.
Yeah,
this is precisely that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We make choices, and not every choice has to be, governed by, the political ramifications of it. But there are decisions we make, and if we are aware and we go, look, if I am giving money to this thing, I am saying something. Sometimes, we have a Whole Foods 3 blocks from our house. It is the closest market to us. Mm-hmm. Okay. You can walk to it. Jen does not drive. Okay.
Oh, really?
To reach any of the other grocery stores is about a 1.5 mile walk. And if there are going to be, a large number of things to get, that becomes hard. So every single time we need a quick thing, Whole Foods, which we don't want to give our money to.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. That's my struggle with Amazon, which I definitely think I've been better about, but it's kind of like, well, I kind of need this on Friday. Yeah, and I think David Walker and I talked about this. He goes, yeah, and it saved me $20. I'm like, I could put that $20 maybe towards something good and then feel good about that. But it's sometimes, we do have to make the choices that we don't want to, or that we feel guilty about. And I guess that's part of life. And at least
we're always trying to negotiate these compromises. I mean, but that's what it is. And again, we come to a word that is not fashionable, which is compromise. Mm-hmm. And it may be that we are forced to compromise so many times every day on a personal level that when it comes to public discourse, we are less inclined to do it. Mm-hmm. There are. We can go on and on about this.
we never go on and on. What do you mean?
Now I'm just looping. So.
Yeah, I think this has been, like I said, every week is always a great conversation. I do learn a lot. We get to hash out a lot, but definitely I needed to talk to you this week. So thank you very much, Greg.
I am very glad we did this, and we will have to. We'll have to make sure that we don't skip next week. So.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll be on for sure. And for our listeners, since we do have to wrap up, Greg's got busy day ahead of him. Don't forget to keep reading Critical Space, Patriot Acts, or Walking Dead, or all three, whichever one you like. And we're gonna amp up towards a conversation. Yeah. We said September-ish, so I think we'll get there.
We're now in September.
We're in September. Yeah. So I'm actually about to start Patriot Acts. I can't wait to talk to you about Critical Space.
Yeah.
I did love it. So, but I can't wait to talk to you about it. I've got lots of notes.
It is arguably one of my best ones. So.
I really loved it. So
sadly, it's that one in Walking Dead that I think are the best, and you're not going to read Walking. So
I'm not, but I got the play-by-play because Oscar kept running into the room telling me how good it was. So, I got the full experience. But
that's great.
But I am trying to sidebar. I know we're wrapping up, but I am trying to do better with it's almost like a therapy thing, right? Like kind of like exposure therapy. Like I am trying to learn to be able to handle content a little differently when it comes to sexual abuse and things like that. Because one of the things I've always wanted to do since I did become more outspoken and share my experience was like really help others. And I don't think I can do that until I'm able to not break down in tears and have emotional outbursts every time things get too heavy. So I've been trying to like slowly watch, the thing on the gymnasts and like, little things, but I still have a hard time. So, but it is something that I feel like I'm trying to get better with.
we heal slowly.
Yeah.
And when we are wounded, so if you, be generous to yourself.
Thank you. This is my training self coming in. Like I need to do this, but yes.
Yeah. And if it works a little at a time, but you have somebody you trust absolutely, an Oscar, and saying, is it okay to, is this a safe depth to wade into?
Right.
I would be really, speaking for myself, I would actually be leery of documentaries and factual things.
Right.
Than things that you can view through a lens of fiction. Because in the lens of fiction, you can always retreat to, this is a real thing. It is a fictional thing. It is a real fake thing, and maybe that provides a little more of a shield.
So. Buffer. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're the one doing this, so ignore me. You got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's a very personal thing. Like you kind of have to figure that out and see what works best. But it is something. But I did love Critical Space, and I can't wait to get into Patriot Acts. And so we'll probably say at least a couple weeks so that I can kind of go through that. I have a couple other. We'll shoot
for the end of the month.
Yeah. Well, our readers have to read the 3 books. So, but I think Oscar will also be ready by then too. So, because he's just jumping into Critical Space now, but once Patriot Act, once we're through the one we have to physically read, because we audiobook, remember, we just don't have the time to sit down and read in the way we do when we're multitasking. So. Anyways, but as always, it is a great pleasure. So everyone keep reading. We will set a date. I will post that. And Greg Rucka, everyone.
Thank you. You take care, Mimi.
Thank you,
Have
Greg.
a good week.
You too. Say hi to the family.
I will.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.